Just going to give it a second as everybody enters the room.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Cup of Hope with Hope Against Trafficking. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You are listening in your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to our panel by typing in the questions on the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will be answering them throughout the session. At least that's our plan right now. So please go ahead, and if you have questions, let us know. I'd like to go ahead and welcome today's panelists. We have Tracy Kavelligan, who is the Executive Director for Hope Against Trafficking. Then we have Hannah McPeak, the Education Director for Hope Against Trafficking. And we'd like to make a special thank you to our special guest speaker this week, and that is Michael Joy, who is a therapist at Perspectives Counseling Centers. He treats adults, adolescents, and children under 12. Before joining Perspectives, he worked in the juvenile justice system. He works with a variety of mental health concerns, including anxiety, depression, anger, impulse control, ADHD, and trauma. He is also the president of the Michigan Counseling Association. So thank you for joining us, Michael, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Great. Well, so just to kind of give a recap for those who might not have seen our other last two webinars, we've done a three-part series on pornography. We talked about what pornography is. We've talked about how it affects the brain, how it affects relationships. And now today we're going to be talking about how to speak to your children about pornography. And we're so excited to have Michael here with us because even though Hannah and I can talk and talk and talk and talk, and I've got teenagers and she's got younger kids, we wanted an actual professional to kind of give us some advice too. So this is kind of selfish because I'm going to be taking notes. So, yeah, I mean, so we've got another crazy week here. We'll just kind of, still trying to live through this order. And we were talking to Michael about how, his whole life counseling is different now and how you're counseling your patients. So it's just been still going along on this shelter. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really, it's all about your attitude about it too now. Like at this point, we're sort of in this, right? And things may not be changing for another month or so. And it's like taking it one day at a time. I'm really excited and honored that we get to still do this and do everything that we can to continue to connect with you, to connect with our audience, to connect with one another, and continue dialogue and continue sharing a cup of hope and talking about real issues, substantive issues that need to be talked about. And we, get to virtually create these spaces. And so I think that at least having the option to be able to do things in this way just opens a lot of different doors for us, and we just sort of have to approach it differently. So I think this is exciting, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk amongst all of us together, and continue to grow together and create community together. So.
Yeah, I mean, normally we have MAP with us, Michigan Abolitionist Project. Emily and/or Shelby usually comes with us, but this week, since it seems to be we have a guest and the topic is very specific to parenting and talking about pornography, we kind of thought we'll keep it a little more, private, not private, but smaller. I don't know, for lack of a better word. So, Michael, would you like to just kind of share a little bit about what you do in your practice to kind of give us a little background of, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, and good afternoon to everybody. I really appreciate Hope Against Trafficking for having me on today, and it's great to be here. I've worked at Perspectives of Troy for the past a little over 3 years now. And as mentioned, I worked in the juvenile justice program, or worked in the juvenile justice system before that, with teenagers that had cognitive impairments and whatnot. So basically what I do in my practice now is I treat people of all age groups, male and female. And if I can focus on the adolescents and kids that I work with, a lot of it involves things like impulse control, anxiety, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, parents and kids not necessarily getting along or on the same page with things, which I think directly leads into the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is the usage of pornography. So I do a lot of work with kids and teens, not only on how they think, how they behave, what are the pros and cons of their choices, coping skills that they use and whatnot, trying to get themselves to know them better. But I also work with parents on really how to use behavior modification techniques and how to communicate with their kids effectively. So that's just a brief synopsis of what I do.
Well, we're glad you're here today because, like I said, I know that I have a lot of questions, and I know Hannah has a lot of questions. So, why you want to start, Hannah, with a question?
Sure. Given that the topic is, how to talk to your kids, the first question that comes to mind for me is, and I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys that are 13 and 10, and then are 13 and 11. Oh my gosh, and a daughter who's 9. And the first thought that I have, just like entering into this whole idea of talking to your kids about pornography, is I've been reading everywhere and been informed it's so important to talk to your kids earlier than you think you should, right? And so the first question that comes to mind is, okay, so I need to talk to my kids now, and I want to, and I'm ready to do that. But the concern that I have is they've never heard of this. Let's say they have never had any exposure to it. What if me bringing this subject matter to the table increases a curiosity in my kids, and they want to, they're like, well, I'm curious now, so they might on their own accord look for something just so they can see it and see what it's like. How do you navigate that when you're having this conversation with your kids?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and certainly with different interventions or different ways of parenting that we use with our kids, there are certain risks that we need to be aware of, such as curiosity, such as talking about it with their friends, so on and so forth.
Right.
And I guess the one of the overriding themes that I will present to people in this presentation is honesty. So honesty, but also age-appropriate honesty when it comes to, what we're talking about and what the detriments of them are. So for the topic of pornography, and Hannah, I think you said you had more younger kids in your home. We want to talk in terms of, language that they'll understand, parts of our bodies that are off limits, that shouldn't be touched, but also that there are places that we can view these things, right? And that we want them to not see that. But we also want to be honest in terms of, hey, I know that it's out there. Curiosity is present, but we still strongly recommend that you do not do this, and we're going to still set up those boundaries. So whether it's setting up rules with phone usage and iPad usage and so on and so forth, it's kind of, you're walking and chewing gum at the same time. There's education to a point, but there's still rules and boundaries. But also we want to be able to be ready to react if and when those things are explored. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later on in the seminar.
That's great. Wow. Great.
Yeah. And that also leads into the question of, you have Christian parents who will say, oh gosh, how do I broach the subject? Should I broach the subject? Should I leave it to their 7th grade sex ed class? Or, the shame that some religions might put around this topic, not really body shame, but like just the shame of, the actual looking at bodies and, and what that can lead to, and it gets really uncomfortable, and you add religion to it. I mean, what do you say to, families and parents in those kinds of situations?
Yeah, some of the same principles, which is honesty and fact. The honest fact is that, there is a perspective of, the Christian faith and through the Bible about how the subject of pornography is viewed. So if I'm having a conversation with a child or a teenager or even an adult, it's kind of like, this is what it says, right? So but we're not going to say, you know what, if you do it, it's bad, or if you do it, you're just, not viewed correctly, or those sorts of things. We want to just stick to kind of like the basic, hey, this is the information you need to know. But also kind of making it constructive, God created us as sexual beings for a reason. God created, other parts of us physically for a reason as well. Sex is not the only thing that God created. Sexual urges is not the only thing that God created, right? There's all sorts of parts of us physically that we need to look at, whether it's how much we eat and what we do about, our sexual appetite, right? So kind of having a comprehensive viewpoint in that way, talking about how God has made us, but also, just referring and refraining from any sort of excessive shame, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, that's I think, when I talk to other parents, and there's people out there who have no problem talking to their children, and there's people out there who have a problem. And what happens if, you're at you have a parent who's like, well, my kid's already 15, 16 or 17 years old. Like my kids are that age. I mean, I've talked with them, but what happened? I mean, is it too late if you haven't had the conversation with them before? I guess research has well, we were talking earlier that around 11 years old is the age that children tend to become, in some way, they actually see pornography. What happens if you haven't talked to them and your child is 14 or 16? What do you propose how to handle that?
Yeah, I think that nothing is irreversible. It's never too late. We want to be able to have those conversations when we want to, no matter how much we fear about how it's going to go. I think that, like I said, I treat a variety of mental health issues, including anxiety. Anxiety, I think, affects how we communicate to our kids about this because we wonder about the what ifs, right? Well, what if this happens? What if I have this talk and then they go and do something, with pornography or, with their sexual appetite and so on and so forth, right? So we want to be able to do what we feel is right. And for a teenager, 16, 17, 18 years old, right, we want to be able to have that conversation about, okay, these are the areas of your life that you kind of want to watch out for when it comes to pornography usage, right? We don't want it to affect your relationships. We don't want it to affect your productivity in school. We don't want it to affect, your ability to handle other things that are important to you, right? So kind of breaking it down in that way so that, kids and teens have a viewpoint, a frame of reference of which to go by, I think is the way to go, because I think the simpler and the clearer we can make it, the better. If we don't make it simple and clear, we kind of go on and on and on and let our passion kind of get the best of us. Good passion, but let our passion get the best of us. Then that's where I think we create more issues than they need to be. So simple, to the point, and again, a good frame of reference for, our teens and kids to look at.
I think that's a really good point, because sometimes we do, like the whole anxiety piece that you were talking about, how, it's like, oh my gosh, my kids are in high school, it's almost too late. So now I have to put it all out there.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to just get a grip, calm down, deep breath, because it's never too late. That's the thing. There's always a cup of hope in this, right? It's never too late to bring this up. It's important to bring it up. That's it. No matter when it happens. But I think within a frame of reference, right? So that it needs to be relevant where they are in their life now. We don't, you don't have to pour it all out there. It's one conversation at a time. But I think that's such a great piece of advice there, because, and even with the younger ones, okay, what's going to be relevant and pertinent right now, in their life, and how is it relating then to the other? Why do I need to know this, right? Pornography, that seems like a one category, one topic but it actually spills into so many other areas of life. And so how do you frame that as such so that they can then actually have make correlations and have how this connects to this part of my life, how this can connect to this part. Wow, this can connect to so many different parts of my life, including thinking about how I think about myself. in relationship to like the world around me, whether it be as a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old. So I think that makes so much sense. Wow. That was good. I felt like it was good to hear and to just sort of like talk it through because that's helpful. It's just really helpful.
Well, it is because, I mean, and then, like you said, it doesn't matter how old, anybody watching this, it doesn't matter how old your child is, I guess, unless they're 26 years old and married. I don't know if you want to have a conversation with them, but if your kids are under 18 or even college age, you can have these conversations with them, the thing also, I think, is just having a conversation with your significant other or the other parent. Because, like, for example, I have 2 boys and 2 girls. Then I think, oh, well, my husband's going to take care of the boys. I don't need to take care of them. I'll just concentrate on the girls. But then maybe he isn't taking care of them. And I haven't really had that conversation with them. And, so then I'm wondering, so I think it's so important, for the parents to talk to each other if you're divorced or, obviously if you're a single parent, you know what's being talked to your child. But, then what's your advice, Michael, about, should we make it, is it better to have the dad talk to the boys and the mom talk to the girls? Or what do you suggest about those kind of delicate things?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say to that is, in terms of boys with male figures, male caregiver figures, or females with, female caregiver figures, moms and dads and so forth. I think it's good that we maybe have them take the lead when it comes to conversation about this topic, just to kind of break the ice, right? And break things down in a way that can be gender-based, that can maybe build comfortability with talking about this subject. But certainly, we want the other person, the other caregiver, the other parent to know what's going on, right? It doesn't necessarily have to go to where it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to tell your mom everything we just talked about, right? It doesn't have to be like that, right? Yeah. But it can be framed in a way where it's like, it's how you talk about it, right? It can be like, you know what, your mom and I, your dad and I want to be on the same page when it comes to this topic because we both care about you and we both want to provide help to you, because parenting, what I tell my parents is it's not only being proactive, but it's being reactive, right? You're going to have to react to things. Being proactive and giving all the education that you can is not going to prevent instances of you having to react to things that happen. So the reason I'm saying that is whether you are the mom, the dad, the female caregiver, the male caregiver, you both have to be ready to react to anything that happens. And based on that, if you know what's been discussed and what the messaging is, because kids and teens know when you're not on the same page, then I would argue that gives you the best chance to succeed with this.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, well, you just brought up the reaction. So what are some kind of, tips that you can give us? Like, okay, so I was cleaning my son's room and oh my goodness, I see on his computer naked women. I don't want to, shame him or make him feel bad, because I don't want all those issues to happen. I mean, so what are some suggestions if you are in a reactionary position?
Yeah, the first thing is that you have to stay calm. It's going to be hard for a lot of parents out there because we care so much. But before you interact with your child, you have to know what you're feeling. So are you thinking about, oh, what is this going to mean for them, a couple years from now? Oh, they're starting right now, those sorts of things, right? It's almost like we should expect it to happen and we're just ready to react again. So, and when you talk to your kids, when you talk to them about it, again, it's fact-based, right? So it's like, hey, I was just, cleaning your room. I was just doing this and I just happened to find, this particular thing, right? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about how it happened or whatever? And again, you meet them where they're at. If they don't want to talk about it, then it's like, okay, I appreciate that you don't want to discuss it right now, but my door's always open, and I just want to encourage you maybe to have, other ways of coping or other ways of behaving, right? And reminding them of the rules and boundaries that you have, whether it's technology restrictions and so on and so forth. But the worst thing we can do is lecture and shame and yell and carry on and those sorts of things. because we want to keep that rapport open as much as possible. We want to find that balance between rapport, allowing them that space to communicate, but also emphasizing the rules when you have to.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to be honest, like a lot, I mean, your immediate reaction is, oh my gosh, take the laptop away. You can't have it in your bedroom anymore, blah, blah, blah. You know, like
Right.
that's just going to create a completely negative response. I mean, that's not going to give them the opportunity to slow down and come and have conversations with you about it. That's not going to help them, help in your relationship with them. You know, I think I love how you put that, because that is one of the things that I know that, you know, my husband and I are going to definitely be needing to talk about. And it's a great thing to recommend is like, yeah, get ready to react, learn how you're going to react. What is your messaging going to be? Because the reality of it isn't if they're going to see this when one way or another, it's when. And then how is everyone going to react? You know, how is this going to, what is that as a result? And the question, just sort of, and I think Tracy, you had brought this up a little bit before we actually started this webinar. We were talking about how, you know, kids are, how do kids, do we go into like talking to our kids about how to react when they're, because their friends are going to be talking about it at one point or another, right? It's going to come up in conversation in one way or another. And so how do we, what are some of the advice that you have to equip our kids to react to that and to deal with it, and how to respond to their friends if something comes up, or, you know, what are some of the things that our kids can do and that we can equip our kids how to respond to that and react?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question. And what I would say to that is just, you know, you want to have sort of a conversation. You want to have a brainstorming session, you know. You want to be able to be like, okay, it's not if, but when you're in a situation where you might engage in this behavior, what are some things you can do? Where are some places you can go? Who are some supportive peers you can rely on in those situations? Can you call us? You know, in fact, say, hey, you know, I'd love for you to call us in those situations and maybe come home, right? Whatever you want to be able to do to not engage too much in what we don't want them to engage in. You know, that's sort of the conversation we want to have. And you don't lead with consequences, but you just say, hey, this is what could and will happen if you dive into this too much, right? The metaphor I was using before we came on is that, you know, we might dip our foot in the pool a little bit, right? But we don't want to submerge ourselves, and we don't want to go too far into exploring this behavior, right? So it's being honest and upfront about that. But like I said, problem solving and, you know, letting them kind of play out what they're going to do, where they're going to go, you know, if, not if, but when they end up in those situations. So we want to take as much precaution as we can. We want to be able to plan enough beforehand so that we're not just reacting to the problem and freaking out and that type of stuff. And again, meeting our kids where they're at. If they don't want to talk about it, if they don't want to play it out, if they're like, no, I just don't want to do it, then it's like, okay, that's fine. But this is what could and will happen. And, you know, I'm ready to help you in any situation. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, and Tracy, if you could give sort of that example that because you talked about this, you know, what you do for your son who's 16
In the car. Yeah. Are you talking about when in the car?
In the phone call, like, oh, you can always blame me, you know, if you're with your friends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, so I give my kids like permission. So like if they're in a situation where they're at you know, at their friend's house, or, you know, at, you know, some activity that I'm not at, that they can call me up and say, oh, I'm really sick. Can you come get me? I'm not going to ask any questions. Or they can text me, or and say, you know, like a code word, and then I'll text them back and say, I want you home right now, you know. And so then they can show the text and say, oh my goodness, my mom, you know, wants me, I gotta leave or whatever. And kind of, I give them permission to badmouth me, I guess, you know, use me as a way to say, to get out of the situation, without worrying about any judgment from their friends or anything. I guess I probably shouldn't say this. I haven't said any, I don't think any of my kids' friends will be watching this, but Now I'm giving away one of the tips, but I do that so that way they feel safe, and 3 of my children have used that. Already, and it's given, and by providing that to them, it starts with the conversation. Hey, you know what? I remember I was in a situation and I didn't have a cell phone, and I remember having to be in this situation. I hated it. I didn't know how to get out of it. And so now that we have cell phones and I'm giving you a cell phone, I want you to use it, in order to, in this capacity. And then we can talk about it. We don't have to talk about it, and so I'm not going to ask any questions. And then when you're ready to talk about why or whatever it is, then we'll talk about it. And so I kind of given that permission to them. And I actually don't even have to ask any questions. They just told me, because I'll pick them up on the car. I find that the car is just such a great place to talk to my kids because we're not looking at each other, we're looking out the windows, and we're driving along, and then they feel very comfortable to talk. I'm not really asking a lot of questions. I'm concentrating on driving, and I'm kind of listening. It's also a good opportunity when you have their friends in the car and listening to their conversations. But yeah, so I use those kind of techniques with my older children. Well, my children are older now, but with them. But I find that one of the things that my kids come back to me with is, well, you treat the boys differently than you treat the girls. Like, why are you having these conversations? I hear you talking to them and about this way or that way. So, I mean, Michael, is that the right thing to do? I mean, should we have different conversations with our daughters and our sons? And, what do you suggest regarding the different genders and how we approach them?
Yeah, no, I think that we can differentiate it. I think for very obvious reasons. The risk factors for girls as opposed to boys. And the thing that I would say to that is, we want to be able to, I guess, show some vulnerability ourselves, right? And really be honest about our emotions and our, the way we've done things. Because we can say, you know what, I'm not always going to get it right. And yes, I maybe have said this to your brother or your sister or whatever the case may be, but here's how I feel about you, right? And here's, what I won't do, don't want to happen to you, right? This is where I'm coming from. So the point being is that I think kids respect honesty, kids respect vulnerability, maybe a little bit of humor when it comes to just how messy this can be, and kind of attacking it from that perspective. But again, getting out the main points, right? This is what I fear for you as a girl versus, what I fear for, you as a boy, sort of thing. And what you said about picking a place like the car, or picking a place where kids can have their own space to think and respond and not feel under pressure. Because I think we can ask ourselves as adults, how would we want to be treated? How would we want to be spoken to if we were talking about a difficult subject, or if we felt pressured, right? It's kind of like our heads being squeezed and we don't want it to keep going, right? So offering that space, but addressing it in a way where we kind of own our own emotions and thoughts and behaviors as a parent, hopefully, I think can give ourselves a good chance.
Yeah, that's really wise. I mean, and what's so funny though is I was in the room the first time my son saw boobs, and it was on a TV show. It was a movie, I think it was on HBO, it was Titanic. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, Titanic's on. And all of a sudden I see Kate Winslet's boobs. And I'm like, and here's my son going, boobs, And I'm like, oh no, So I had to start with the reaction with, like an 8-year-old. And so sometimes it comes unexpected because you think of like, oh, this secret, dirty thing. But sometimes it can come up like while you're, folding laundry and Titanic's on TV.
Really?
So that was pretty
Y'all
crazy.
didn't expect that.
No, I'm just like, whoa, where's the remote? It's too late. You know what I mean? I'm like fast forwarding and it's already too late. But luckily I did the car scenes next. And I'm just like, whoa, Titanic is not appropriate. Let's take this off. You forget. You're just thinking, oh yeah, it's about a ship. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I guess sometimes that's a good way to like open the door and start a conversation. Sometimes those moments, again, if they're kind of ready to react, then hey, those moments sometimes open themselves up for an opportunity to jump in and engage in a conversation.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of important, and that's why we want to have this. The kids are online more now that we're all at home and doing the schooling. You don't know what will pop up. You got hackers coming into Zoom and showing pictures, and it could be just as innocent as watching TV. Having these conversations with your significant other or the other parent or the other guardian is real important, so that if your 5-year-old sees boobs, you can address it without being too embarrassed. I don't know if I should have handled that too well. I was just like, woohoo, uh-oh, where's the remote? But it definitely starts the conversation. That's for sure.
So as we sort of like close the conversation here, Michael, is there any like final comments, final thoughts, sort of wrap the conversation up?
Yeah, no, I just want to let the parents out there know that I think that they're doing a great job and that they are doing the best they can to handle their kids in general, in a very chaotic world, especially now with us being quarantined. And that includes how we handle the issue of pornography, right? It's not going to be perfect, right? As Tracy mentioned, there's stories out there where it's like, okay, well, now we're going to have this conversation and didn't expect it to go this way, but we are doing the best they can, right? And if we can frame it in a way where we are doing the best we can, we're doing a good job, and we're at least giving our kids a chance for success, that's all we can expect out of ourselves. And generally it ends up well. So I just wanted to let the parents out there know that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. And I just want to say too that, there's always hope. It's never too late. There's never a point that you can't go back and love on those kids and engage in those conversations. And really, like what Michael said, give them the best chances of life, And so what I want to say is everybody share today and every day.
That's right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies
Thank you,
ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you, everybody, for attending today's Cup of Hope panel. For more information about Michael Joy or for some resources that they have, you can go to perspectivesoftroy.com. Again, that's perspectivesoftroy.com, and we'll send that in the follow-up email that you'll get tomorrow. We do appreciate your time and hope you found this session valuable. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation. We would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email, as I mentioned, within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view today's recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Hope Against Trafficking and the Michigan Abolitionist Project, thank you so much for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.